All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind. But we're going to have a show.
And good morning, all. Good afternoon, all. Good evening, all. To all of the ships at sea. To all listening wherever you are on this great planet. Welcome. I want to tell you that Kim is with us.
Kim, how are you?
As usual, so it's a very good thing. It's a good day. Kim's working late into the night on this show. And Tony's with us, too.
Thanks, Tony.
Tony's been working early this morning on the show. So we're covering all ends of the day. If you haven't yet, smash the like button. If you would, please do it now. It's free. Why not? Throw us a little love.
Rod.
Thanks to all the new Patreon and PayPal subscribers. There are a handful of you, and I really appreciate that. I've written back to each one of you individually. So very much appreciate that. And then if you are one of our ongoing supporters, you know, we're crowdfunded, so appreciate that support. And we post your names at the end of every show to show you how much we do appreciate it. David Katz, the esteemed former federal prosecutor, joins us on Thursdays. He will be here in hour 2. Belinda goes from hour 2 to hour 1 today. So we have that, but a lot of news. I mean, the news is on some level predictable out of the world of politics and the growing indictment list against Donald Trump and his co-conspirators, alleged co-conspirators. But what is wild news is what's happening, and again, not completely unanticipated, but it's sort of, I guess this is America 2.0. Some of the doxing that's going on regarding grand jurors and the judge. I'll get to that in a second. There are some revelations out of Hawaii on the fire. I mentioned hurricane because actually the alarms that didn't sound, it's now being argued, and I want to say credibly argued, by Hawaiian officials, that those alarms, which we identified as typically being used in tsunami situations, are the wrong alarms to sound in a fire situation. And for that reason, they say they deliberately did not sound those alarms. So when it comes to natural disasters, and in Hawaii, they deal with hurricanes, they deal with tsunamis more regularly than they do with the kind of wildfire that we've seen. Certainly, I mean, well, this is I think once in a lifetime, many lifetime type fire. I mean, it's complete engulfing of these areas to the point that, you know, they literally can't recognize many who lost their lives there. I mean, that puts it in a different category. But the point is, it wouldn't have been helped, the situation, they argue. This is Hawaiian officials. I can read you some quotes. It wouldn't have been helped, that situation, by the alarms, because the alarms are designed to tell people that there is a tsunami, move away from the coast and go inland. We did hint at this the other day, Kim. I think we talked about this, that we were just kind of just spinning because we were trying to figure out why they didn't. Now, that may not be the real reason they didn't post the alarm or sound the alarm, but that's the reason they're giving now. So, I mean, to digress. Yeah, go ahead.
So what you're saying is it was the wrong alarm, so we'd rather have no alarm?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're saying.
Doesn't there need to be some indication that something bad is afoot and you need to, pop your head up, look around, and get out?
Yeah, I mean, that I think is a decent point. I hadn't intended to start the show this way, but why not? We're talking about it, so let me get...
The Mark Thompson Show.
Sirens were silent during the Lahaina fire. Maui's emergency chief says that he doesn't regret it. The story from the LA Times. Herman Andaya, who leads Maui's emergency management agency, defended the decision not to sound warning sirens As they review the emergency response to the Lahaina fire and what could have been done differently, why weren't the sirens sounded? Andaya talked about it during a Wednesday afternoon press conference. Do you regret not sounding the sirens? I do not, Andaya responded. The death toll from the fire has risen to 110, with 38% of the burn zone searched. Families and friends have held out hope for missing loved ones, as more than 1,000 people remain unaccounted for, as you're probably aware. Andaya said I'm sorry, go ahead.
111 now, and 1,000 people still on the missing list.
So Andaya said the island's outdoor siren system was designed for tsunamis, not wildfires. It is not part of the agency's standard response protocol. Quote, the public is trained to seek higher ground in the event that the siren has sounded, he said. The agency used several other types of emergency notifications to alert people to the fire, he said. Some of the systems used were wireless emergency alerts, which send text messages to residents, and the emergency alert system, which broadcasts emergency notifications through television and radio.
Look at that. Radio is important again. That was the only thing. That's the only way people were getting messages, is through the traditional radio in their car radio. They would get in the car and turn on the radio, and they would get the emergency information they needed. They didn't get it on their cell phone. They weren't notified about the emergency on the cell phone because the cell towers were down. The cell service was down. The landlines were down. The power was out. So it was emergency radios, and the radio stations had backup generators and kept running. So in this emergency, it was radio mainly that got the information. So what you're saying is, basically, or what he's saying is, they couldn't use the phone notification system because landlines and cell phones were down. And he decided, or the system malfunctioned or whatever, and they couldn't use the tsunami sirens. So no warning. No warning was better than anything else. I just think that's ridiculous.
He said that many of the sirens are along the coastline, not on the mountainside of Lahaina, which is where the fire ignited. Hawaii Governor Josh Green backed Andaya at the news conference, recounting his own experience when he came to the state to practice medicine. Quote, when I first moved to Hawaii, people told me if you hear a siren, it's a tsunami, and to go to high ground. Now, Andaya is also getting a lot of criticism that he's not qualified to lead an emergency team. His qualifications or lack of qualifications are now being very much a part of this story. The Honolulu Civil Beat, which is a nonprofit news organization, right on for nonprofit news organizations, they published an article yesterday, and they called out Andaya's lack of work in emergency management leadership before his selection to lead the EMA. When a reporter mentioned the article, essentially what the article stated, because I read it yesterday, it suggested that he was an aide in the governor's office. He was the right-hand person at the governor's office, and or the mayor's chief of staff, I think is what he was, actually, to be specific. And as a result of that relationship, he got that job, not as a result of qualifications. That was the essential allegation of the article, or certainly the implication. In any case,
what's the job? It's the emergency services person for Maui?
Yeah, the emergency management leadership position for Maui. Exactly.
Is that supposed to be a cush job? Like,
the emergency
all the
management
systems
agency
are already in place, so what do you have to really do except babysit a system that's already up and running?
So he was confronted about this yesterday, and he defended his work and his history. He said, I spent 11 years as the Maui County mayor's chief of staff, later as the deputy director of the county's Department of Housing and Human Concerns. During that time, he said, he went through numerous trainings and often reported to the Emergency Operations Center. He also said he had to complete a civil service exam and was vetted by emergency managers before he was selected for the role. To say I'm not qualified, I think, is incorrect, Andaya said. The rest of the essential aspects of this talk about the community, obviously going through one of the worst things that they could ever imagine. And the searches go on. But there are questions as to warnings. And honestly, I think the questions, and these are the questions that we're familiar with, all too familiar with in Paradise, California. I think the questions have to be asked about evacuation routes and the limited arteries out of there. I mean, there was basically one road. Isn't that right, Kim?
Yeah, there's two ways, but 2 ways in and out, and that's it. A very limited egress and ingress to that area. I was talking to my husband yesterday about why nothing was done, why the warnings were issued. You talked about it on this show about how a couple of years ago, Maui was designated an extreme fire risk area, and the list of 50 things they could do to help prevent loss of life like this were given. And I was saying, why couldn't Maui have learned the lessons that we've already learned in California, where we've instituted the public safety power shut off in the high winds, or, we have, different things that because of wildfires, we operate differently now. Why couldn't they have learned the lesson from us? And he said, because you don't spend the money and you don't take the time to, do the upgrades and make the changes unless you feel the pain.
Now, I think
And I
that
thought that was
sadly
really
is true.
interesting that you have to go through it yourself to realize how you need to change. You can't take someone else's lesson. You've got to go through it. So you would always think maybe, oh, we've got time to make these changes. Oh, we don't have to spend this money right away on the fire boats. Oh, we don't have to do all these things they're asking us to do. And I'm so sad that it has to come to this before the changes are made.
I think that the kind of warning system that's in a way already in place for the tsunamis, that could have been expanded. So, when he says, well, most of the warning sirens are along the coast, well, then expand them. Put the warning system and the warning siren speakers, place them in other places strategically away from the coast toward inland, and then develop 2 different signals. One is the tsunami signal and one is the wildfire signal. I mean, it really isn't that hard.
I would argue that when you go out of your house thinking there's a tsunami and there's smoke in the air, you're not running toward the fire. You can see it as you head that way. I don't think people are complete idiots. They would figure out that, oh, it's a fire, not a tsunami.
Well, it is idiotic that there is only one siren. It is. I'm sorry. That it is idiocy. And here's the other thing on that. After everything goes down, and we're, cut to today, people could say, well, they sounded the wrong siren. It was the tsunami siren, and we're told to run inland, and then lawsuits ensue. Mm-hmm. So, you could see that. I'm not saying that's what happened, but if that is the general warning from that siren, then I kind of do understand it. That said, again, develop another sound. We have them. You have the air raid siren, and you have the fire siren. Mm-hmm. Even these emergency vehicles have different kinds of sirens on them. So I look, again, this seems as though it was a lot of things coming together that were uncontrollable. And I don't know to what extent you could have saved all of those sweet souls who lost their lives. But I do know that this system is insufficient, and it can be improved upon and should be improved upon. So that's what I walk away with at the end of all of this, that changes do have to be made.
In San Francisco, there's an emergency siren. It doesn't designate fire or earthquake or tsunami or anything. It's just the emergency siren. They test it. They used to test it every Friday at noon. It would go off for a minute. Did you ever experience that when you're in San Francisco?
I don't remember
the sirens
it,
are
no.
whirr, you're like, oh, yeah. Every Friday.
Well, Friday at noon, I was so inebriated. I would not have noticed.
You were already down at Grumpy's having a drink. Yeah, that's
exactly.
How it
you could find me at the. But you couldn't tell what it was, though, Kim. You're saying, okay, there's some emergency going on. I don't know what it is.
Some emergency meant, you need to take some kind of action. Something's happening. The siren's going on. There's an issue.
Well, that's a little, again, I think that's a little generic for much thing. There's Mark, this is Jim saying this. I haven't read this. I just see this. Mark, there is no such thing as a wildfire siren. There was no large history of the fire threat in that area. Why would they put wildfire sirens in an area that's not known for having massive wildfires? Well, I'm sure you're right about the fact that there's no wildfire siren. What I'm saying is one should be developed now. But I would take issue with the second part of what you said, which is there is no history of a wildfire threat in that area. Now, you may be partially right. Please don't misunderstand me. I think that there is certainly nothing on record along the lines of what we've just seen. But it is an area, I mean, I'm talking about Hawaii. They do have a wildfire season there, just as we do in California. Now, again, they don't have a history of the sort of destruction that we have or that we've seen in Hawaii, but they do have a season where they're more prone to fire. So all I'm trying to say is, and maybe I'm, making a point that doesn't need to be made, but they should develop, I think this is the point that should be made, they must develop another warning system. And obviously, they need to improve the way that people can get out of there. I mean, you just cannot have everybody squeezed into that little area. That's what happened in Paradise. That's what happened in my neighborhood. I lost my neighborhood to fire. We got out of there early. You got to get out of there early. Because if you're one of the, it's a bunch of people, these are, they all have their Lexus SUVs or whatever the hell they had in my neighborhood, and they're packing their crap in. They're all well-off people. I mention that because they all feel like they should be cutting you off in traffic and getting to where they're going because it's more important to where you're going. So you got a bunch of people like that. They're squeezed into and everybody's angry and, Scared, really scared. Mm-hmm. And it's just not sufficient. So, look, whenever the kind of elements that came together in Hawaii come together, it's not going to be a happy ending, but things can be done. And to your point, Jim, if there's no wildfire siren, and clearly there isn't, I believe they should develop multiple siren sounds. Now, Tony, I want to. What did you have for me? You have some video, or what do you have?
I have the video from the press conference where they confronted him with the. It's really good, but
really?
why
Okay.
he didn't play the sirens.
Yeah, go ahead and run. Go ahead and run it then, please. Thank you.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not, and the reason why. And
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
If they had time to escape,
Would lives have been saved if they'd had time?
Gone off, they would have known that there was a crisis emerging, and as we know, so many bodies were found in the ground.
Do you want him to give you the answer, or do you want to give? Well, then let him finish. Let him finish his answer.
Sorry, there's a lot of people.
Well, you're talking and you're not letting him talk. If you want to talk, come up here.
I'm ready for the answer.
Then wait.
the sirens, as I had mentioned earlier, is used primarily for tsunamis, and that's the reason why many of them are found, almost all of them are found on the coastline. The public is trained to seek higher ground in the event that the siren is sounded. In fact, on the website of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, the following guideline is provided. If you are in a low-lying area near the coastline, evacuate to high grounds, inland or vertically to the fourth floor and higher of a concrete building. Alerts may also come in the form of a wireless emergency alert. Had we sounded the siren that night, we're afraid that people would have gone malka. And if that was the case, then they would have gone into the fire. And so that is the reason why our protocol has been to use WEA and EAS. By the way, I should also note that there are no sirens malka or on the mountainside where the fire was spreading down. So even if we sounded the siren, it would not have saved those people on the mountainside.
All right, that was good. Thank you. That really was good. Thank you, Tony. There was a moment in that press conference where the dude comes forward and Square is right, where he goes, "Hey, are you want him to answer, or do you want him to, And that was a chit moment for sure.
There was no aloha at that conference.
No, the aloha is.
There's a lot of blame going on. People are angry. They're at the point where, first it was devastation. It's the stages of grief. And now they're into it's anger. How could this have happened? And I think that the key piece of that anger is that report that you read showing that it was deemed an extreme fire risk area with a list of things that needed to be done and no steps were taken.
Thank you. That's exactly right. It was a 1,000-page report. I talked about it the other day.
Nothing was done.
Yeah, when it wasn't just a report, there were recommendations, as Kim says. So, and the last thing I'll say, gosh, I didn't expect that we were going to talk about this for so long, and it's such a grim subject, and this perhaps is going to make it no less grim. But just because of when it hit and the way it hit, they're worried that children are a large share of the dead remaining. Schools are closed. Parents left children at home while they worked. And sadly, that may be, yet another fact that emerges out of all of this in Hawaii. We'll watch it for you and share any information that that is new.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'll quickly mention this. I've got David Katz, the brilliant, now defense attorney, but former federal prosecutor, coming in at the beginning of the next hour. And of course, Belinda awaits. Normally she'd be in the second hour, but she'll be up in just a few minutes here today, just a little bit earlier. But I'll just mention this in the Trump case. The judge now, this again is right on cue and sort of the way stuff is going down in 2023. The judge is facing death threats. The jurors are being doxxed. If Trump doesn't get elected in 2024, we are coming to kill you, a Texas woman allegedly said in a voicemail to U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan. She was arrested Wednesday, that woman, after she allegedly threatened to kill the federal judge overseeing the election interference case against former President Trump. The news came just hours after media outlets reported that the purported names and addresses of grand jurors in the Georgia vote tampering indictment had been shared on far-right message boards.
Oh, no.
The episodes reflect the charged political divide over the legal whirlwind surrounding Trump and growing concerns about the safety of those involved in prosecuting him. Trump has regularly lambasted, which is a ding word, special counsel Jack Smith as deranged and attacked the judges assigned to his cases. That message on Truth Social where he says, if you come after me, I'm coming after you. Prosecutors said Wednesday that authorities had arrested Abigail Jo Schrei, she's 43, from Alvin, Texas, for allegedly calling the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., where U.S. Judge Tanya Chutkan has chambers. She's the one, of course, overseeing the federal indictment related to the J6 attack. Schrei apparently left a threatening message calling the judge a stupid slave, and Chutkan would be, the judge, Chutkan, would be, quote, targeted personally, publicly, your family, all of it, end quote. The call was made 2 days after Trump was arraigned in the January 6th case. Quote, you are in our sights. We want to kill you, end quote.
That's a gun term, right? Your sights?
Oh, I didn't even think of that, but I suppose.
If you're in someone's sights, I think that's when you're in the
sure,
the little
you're in the
crosshairs.
thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If Trump doesn't get elected in 2024, we are coming to kill you, she said. She also threatened to kill Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. She's the Democrat out of Texas. She's also black. I mean, again, I don't know how much of this is racially
Racist.
motivated, but
Seems like it.
Sadly, I have to mention that fact. Mm-hmm. Now, Schrei did admit to investigators that she left the message, but said she didn't plan to travel to Washington. She's been jailed in Texas. She's been charged 4 times, by the way, this same lady, over the past year. 4 times in the last year in similar cases. So this ain't her first rodeo. Now, that's the judge. There's also this doxing of the grand jurors. The names and addresses of the grand jurors who indicted Trump in Fulton County, Georgia, have been posted on a fringe website along threats of intimidation and violence. Unlike in many other states, Georgia publicizes the names of jurors in an attempt to keep criminal proceedings transparent. So the same transparency that brings cameras into the process, which we feel is a good thing, just so you can see the process and its legitimacy or illegitimacy. You can judge on your own. That same philosophy has led to the transparency where jurors' names and addresses are posted or available. I mean, it seems so stupid is the word that comes to mind that you would do that.
But
they're people who are performing a civic duty, and you post their names. I mean, didn't you see Cape Fear? I mean, they made the movie Cape Fear. They made it twice. The movie Cape Fear, he comes after the guy who prosecuted him. In this case, because it's the new America, everybody's armed up and PO'd. They're going to come after, or at least threaten to come after, those who are performing their civic duty as jurors. It's insanity.
Well, we saw that in the January 6th committee hearings. We saw that the poll workers were targeted in 2020, right? Death threats against poll workers and their families. These are volunteers. We see the judge threatened. What is it logical then to assume that the potential jurors would be threatened? And I wonder if because the names were posted on conservative chat boards or whatever, if now the jury pool is tainted and they'll have to do something different.
Well, the idea of there's a lot going on in that. I'm going to talk to David Katz about that. There's a lot going on here to taint the jury pool. And remember, I told you the real get out of jail free card that Donald Trump retains, as do the rest of his merry men and women, Sidney Powell and I think a couple of others. The real get out of jail free card is to taint the jury pool, is to essentially so muddy the jury pool that you'll just never be able to get and seat the kind of jury that can be objective. But as long as you're changing the sirens in Hawaii, maybe you should change this policy in Georgia. It's crazy. So you've got grand jurors who, again, are performing their civic duty. And, on Kim's point, you have those other volunteer poll workers who are part of that case in Georgia. Those two sweet people, they broke into their home. They threatened them. They I would suggest on some level, destroyed their life for a time anyway. And now these poor women are looking over their shoulder all the time. It's outrageous. It's disgusting. So this new thing we're doing, it ain't cool, man. And the law in this case cracks back on this one woman who, I guess 4 times this year, leaves similarly threatening messages to public officials. But there ought to be something if there was a way to track down those who dox people who are just performing their civic duty. Look, if this had been one of those Supreme Court justices, do you remember when Brett Kavanaugh's house had a dude who was circling the house, either it was out front or a block away? I mean, they brought in the cavalry for that. Well, we ought to treat these other volunteer public officials the same way, with the same sense of a cherished jewel that we treat these Supreme Court justices. So,
why are you yelling?
End of speech, but I think that it's just outrageous.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'll talk more about that with David Katz, who joins us in the next hour, and really about what can happen with that jury. I'll chat with him about that. Smash the like button for Kim, for Tony, for me.
Smash it with your iron rod.
For Belinda, who's coming up, for David Katz. Smash it like a boss.
With your iron rod.
Like a boss, is what I'm saying. Belinda's in the lobby. Can we just have her wait for another... I don't know what her schedule is today. I think we had to get her on early.
Yeah, we did. Maybe we should take her first and then news.
Okay, why don't we do that then?
Yeah.
So, Tony, we'll do It's the Planet Stupid, and then we'll do Kim's News, and then we'll do Katz. Is that cool with you, sir? Are you good with that?
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah?
Yeah, let's...
Okay.
I'll get bumped to save the planet any day. It's all right.
All right. We like to focus on the planet. Once a week, we do it in a segment we call It's the Planet Stupid.
the planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid. No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid is Belinda Waymouth. Belinda, how are you?
I am very well, thank you. How are you, Mark?
No, we are well here. I'm excited about having you on. I'm excited about sort of taking stock of things, which I think you want to do, meaning take stock of some of the changes that we've made in this country with an eye toward greening things up and then an eye toward the future. But it's not just this country. Please, you first.
Well, here's the thing. This has been a very big week. You know, we had the decision in Montana on Monday when the district court judge, Kathy Seeley, found in favor of the plaintiffs, you know, these 16 plaintiffs aging in age from 5 to 22. And she said, yes, the government has a duty to protect citizens from climate change. And this was huge because the organization and the lawyer behind this whole court case, you know, and taking a state to court, because what happens in Montana, you know, they have a state policy whereby there is no evaluating when they're allowing, you know, fossil fuel permitting requests. Agencies are not allowed to evaluate the effects of greenhouse gas emissions. And what this judge found was this is unconstitutional. And, you know, these 16 kids who got up, you know, they talked about, you know, the smoke that they're breathing in, the orange sky that they're seeing outside their windows, that they, you know, can't go outside, that their lungs feel like they're full of fire. I mean, they are on the front lines of feeling the effects of climate change. And this is really huge because I've heard Julie Olson, you know, their attorney, talk before, and you know, she is driven. She wants to make a difference. She's the ED of an Oregon-based environmental group called Our Children's Trust. They have filed similar lawsuits in every single state over the past 12 years. And this is the first time it went to trial. So the fact that it did, the fact that a judge did say, yes, of course, the state should be looking after its citizens and that, you know, greenhouse gases, you know, being emitted into the atmosphere, causing climate change, causing this huge increase in wildfires, droughts, you know, all the things that these young plaintiffs talked about. And, you know, for us, Mark, we're at a different, you know, stage in our lives, but these kids, this is what they're dealing with now and will be for their entire lives. It was amazing. It was a big moment.
Well, this is a very looked at and talked about case, and it was by no means clear what the outcome would be. And I wonder if you could just kind of summarize what the case was. One of the things I thought, and I'll let you summarize, then I'll be quiet. One of the things I thought they might say is, you know, that these kids don't have agency, you know, to bring this case. You know, these are young people who, as you say, they really have so much at stake here, this generation. And I thought it was a real brilliant move on their part and those who support them to bring this to court. So essentially they were saying what in their court case?
Well, they were saying that, you know, you can't allow all these industries in Montana to pollute. And by the way, Montana is the 5th largest coal producing state, you know, in the US. With impunity, that this is just not okay. The way, you know, it's sort of the way that, you know, if a industrial site is putting all its polluted water into a waterway that feeds the aquifer that people then drink out of, you know, you take them to court because they're violating the Clean Water Act. And this is the Clean Air Act. And what the state was trying to say, you know, so they were saying what you're doing is you're polluting our atmosphere. You're having this hugely detrimental effect on the quality of our lives, on the health, on our future. And this is just not okay. And the state kept on trying to say, oh, but we're just one little state and what happens in Montana isn't going to make a difference globally. We're just this little sideline, you know, state. But, you know, the thing is we talk about this all the time, and that we're in this, real, this absolutely sort of pivotal and transitional moment. And the thing that also happened this year is that the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden got passed, it was a year ago. The anniversary was yesterday. And the fact is the passing of that, the biggest, policy, that's ever been passed in the States, the hugest amount of money, almost $400 billion to, fight climate change, to speed up our transition to renewables. It's made this huge difference. It's happening. I mean, I tweeted and I, pinged you on it just a couple of hours ago. The story that was, came out over the weekend in the New York Times, and just, the International Energy Agency is saying, look, this, move to renewables is underway. We might not see it, but it is game on. And the US, I mean, we're going to have 23% of our electricity this year is going to come from renewables. I mean, in a couple of years, they are going to surpass coal as the biggest, energy source. Wind and solar. They're going to outcompete, coal by 2025. China is on track to make this transition to renewables 5 times faster than they had said they would. And one of the things that the judge, cited was that, Montana could be getting 80% of its energy from renewables very, very easily. And the fact is it's, and I mean, I say this all the time, I'm like a broken record, Mark, and I admit it, whether the fossil fuel industry likes it or not, we are making this change. I mean, automakers are saying the combustion engine is going to be a thing of the past. It is coming, and we can, there can be this, fight. I mean, one of the things I thought was interesting is the state of Montana had an expert witness, a climatologist who was, going to get up there and say, it's not human-caused emissions that are causing climate change. But she didn't take the stand. They didn't put her on the stand. They had her written testimony, because contrarians like her, scientists who say that it's not our emissions, they're, this minuscule proportion, while the predominance of scientists say, yes, it's us, and we have to change. And the fact is we are changing.
There's a kind of an all-you-can-eat aspect to energy policy in China, for example, when we talk about China making these changes, and I see in the chat, and some of the chat stuff is troll-ish. I mean, maybe not trolls, but troll-adjacent. Like, well, why don't you just shut everything down then, man? I mean, or whatever. I mean, okay. But I think there is a quality of transition that does include sort of an all-you-can-eat policy. So anyway, to finish my thought on China, I just want your thought on this, Belinda. Yeah, they are into renewables, and there is a huge, robust, even green sector within the Chinese economy and then within the Chinese energy policy. But there's also a real dirty part of China energy policy. And you could even say in this country, too, we have I don't mean to insult American greatness or even the changes to which you've referred, but we also still have a lot of dirty fuel. We're still drilling in areas that, in my judgment, we shouldn't be. But that said, that is the sort of thing that transitions are made of, meaning, yeah, I get it. They're still doing both, but the transition will be to, and what will last, will be to the renewable energy.
Yes, I mean, here's the thing, is it's just inevitable. This change is happening, I mean, in spite of what all these conservative groups are doing. I mean, we've got the Heritage Foundation and other conservative groups. They've created this playbook, if Republicans win in 2024, to undo all the renewable energy progress, to
it's scary
regulations. I mean, and the fact is, guys, make reality your friend, because the future is going to be renewables. And honestly, I have to tell you, Mark, when I think about it, I really feel like, and I know that these young people do, we're sort of dealing with domestic terrorists. When you want to keep burning fossil fuel, and when you don't want to be regulated, and you want to just sort of push through all your fossil fuel projects through a state that's super friendly like Montana, which is, a Republican-dominated, state legislature. So, what will happen now that this judge has made her finding? Who knows? Because it's, there's going to be a lot of pushback. But they are really, it's not like what Northern Ireland went through with the Troubles, when you can actually see, the other side, throwing Molotov cocktails and bombs at you. But it is, in a way. It is. It's not overt they're throwing them at you. But the fact is every, ton of greenhouse gas that these, new projects are going to put into the atmosphere is going to have a lethal, impact on these children. And so they were no, sorry, I shouldn't say children, young people, because there was a 5-year-old, but there was also a 22-year-old. And they got up there and they were so articulate when they said, this is the reality and this is the world I'm dealing with. So, I just, it's
a victory. It's a victory, but it's a victory, but there's a lot going on. And yes, I think you're right. And I was talking about this last week. I can't remember whether you were with us last week or not. Some week you weren't here. I was talking about the fact that the GOP plan, as articulated, it's right out there, is to undo everything in terms of all renewables and energy policy. They're going to lean heavily into dirty energy. And honestly, a lot of that is, and they're making noise with it, is just to own the libs. So we're going to destroy the planet just to own the libs. It's not even the policy that makes any sense. It doesn't even pencil out well. I mean, the support of the coal industry that was under the Trump administration, where they were offering them all those tax subsidies. And I mean, our tax dollars were going into simply because they wanted to own the libs. It was utterly absurd. There wasn't even a good jobs policy associated with it. Usually they attach that, well, it makes for so many jobs. No, not in that case. So yeah. I think there's a lot. The politics of it is just galling because it doesn't really address the issue. It's just like, what are you going to do to address the real problems, the real challenges, as opposed to just trying to own the libs all the time?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's such a, it's such a perversion, and it's such a waste of time, because we need to be getting on with, the change and, making this shift. And the fact that it's happening in spite of these people, who are digging in their heels, to own the libs. I mean, it's just, what a waste of energy,
Yes, no, exactly. By the way, I missed impunity, I believe was a ding word much earlier. Belinda, lastly, we only have you for another minute or so. Talk about what's happening with Sweden and electric vehicles. And this is sort of a breakthrough technology that's kind of wild.
Yeah,
Tony, you might be able to rally a picture of this when Tony.
Oh, yeah, bring up the picture because it's so
here it is.
Cool.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So you see the line that's under the bus. So that bus is, as it's driving, is being recharged by that rail that's, built into the asphalt. So it's going to be exactly like trams were on, rail, like on a rail, going around the city. And the thing that's so beautiful about this is that you will be able to have smaller batteries in cars. They'll be able to go further because they'll be able to be charged while they're on the move. And talk about technological breakthrough. It also tabulates how much energy each car is using. And so they'll get charged for it as they do it. And it's just really clever, because, the thing that you're always hearing with the naysayers is, we won't have enough charging stations. Well, guess what? We could make a road that charges your car while you're driving on it. So just as we have the carpool lane on the freeway, we could have the electric car lane, I mean, it's really, I just love this, and it's been in the works for a few years. It's getting closer and closer. There are more than one, there's more than one company that are dealing with it. And I just think it's brilliant, and
it's wildly innovative. It's just magnificently innovative. So really great stuff.
It's so fantastic. It's just so fantastic. And who will jump on it is China, because they are already making, more electric vehicles than any other country. They're making the smallest ones. They'll, you put obviously a connecting pad on the bottom of the car that, then makes contact with the rail that's on the road. And, voila, you've got your charging station, smaller batteries, so less lithium and all those, the precious rare earth metals that need to go into them, and no downtime with charging. You know,
No, it really is brilliant. Yeah, and so you don't have all of that, range anxiety when it comes to recharging, et cetera. I will ding voila, and I love chatting with you, Belinda. Thank you for being here. We'll look forward to next week at your normal time, but any time is always a treat. So thank you so much, Belinda Waymouth, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
More.
It's the planet stupid. No, it's the planet stupid.
Next time, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
I'm happy to indulge any comments. If you see something, Kim or Tony, that I need to respond to, I don't care if it's a negative comment. I don't care if it's a critical comment. Of course, happy to do it. So it'd be really. And by the way, I got a breakdown. Oh, let me tell you about this real quick. And then
the Mark Thompson Show.
I got a breakdown early this morning of my KTLA morning show appearance. When I went on the morning show to plug this show.
Yeah.
The morning show in Los Angeles is the top morning show in LA, right? So I go on there, and they were really cool to have me on. And we talked about a bunch of stuff. And then I got this today from, can I do this now, Tony? Or can I just read this now? It just came in this morning. I didn't clear this with you ahead of time.
Let's go for it.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Tony. Something, or are you good?
I don't think you need to get anything. I mean, this is the morning show if you want to get a still frame of it or something if you want. But I think it's optional. Don't worry about it. This is from Mark. Can't be all bad. Hey, Mark and Kim, Albert, and Tony, too. No, Tony, too.
Thanks, Tony.
I've been a big fan since KGO, and I'm a modest Patreon supporter. Yeah, I will ding a Patreon supporter of any kind. Thank you. Your team has been part of my daily routine, even more so since I lost my job in April. Well, that's nice. I just watched your critique of your KTLA spot, and you were definitely your charming self. I'm not a media person, but I've been working with companies and organizations on, quote, people-related challenges for over 30 years. Well, all right, I'm all ears. Talk to me.
What?
I have some thoughts, he said. Uh-oh. Now, this first one, I agree with. It's a criticism of me. I agree with it. I would never use the words downscale again. Remember, I was trying to explain that this is kind of a homegrown show and that I didn't want people to tune in thinking, it's bap, 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 like, you know what I mean? So I was kind of trying to explain it. So I said, it's sort of a downscale show. We're homegrown. And I was explaining it that way. And Tony's not.
Agree on that one.
Tony agrees.
Yeah, that would hurt me.
There's nothing downscale about this operation. I don't know what you're trying to say here.
Well, I actually was specifically talking about you and Tony, Kim.
Top-notch talent. Tony. Do this to me all the time.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
I would never use the words downscale again. It diminishes the quality of your show. I'd find another word. Try using ChatGPT for better ideas.
And this is their new hoax.
Okay, yeah. Homegrown, he says, is fine.
Okay.
You had some 3-screen footage of one guest. You missed an opportunity to promote the amazing range of regular guests you have every week. Katz is my favorite. Well, Katz is coming up in a couple of minutes. I'd suggest you have a slide at the ready. Now, that's the slide. That's the piece of video we showed on that morning show. And that's a Pulitzer Prize winner right there who's laughing there in the upper right-hand box. That's Michael Hiltzik. He's a brilliant writer. And he writes on business for the LA Times. We should get him next week. I will book Hiltzik next week. I want to talk to him about interest rates. And, they're at all-time highs for home loans. Anyway, Mark says, I'd suggest you have a slide at the ready, which has photos and names of your high-profile regulars and what they discuss. Tailor it to that appearance's audience. Like in LA, maybe include entertainment-centric topics. Also have another slide with one-off guests that you've had, whether it's an author, the other Mark Thompson. You've got regular programming, which I look forward to. Have another slide to promote the names of the segments. Murder Mystery Monday, Florida Friday, blah, blah, blah. He says, Florida Friday's fabulous, or what Kim calls it this week.
Kim, how are you?
It's Friday Fabulous Florida, just for the record. Speaking of Kim, when you mention the show, do mention the qualifications of your partners. Kim's length in radio is impressive.
Kim, how are you?
Thank you
And
very
you'd
much.
be talking through a rotary phone if it weren't for Albert and Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
This is not the best week to be. All right. Okay, maybe. Lastly, many people are vain, so definitely mention the Talk to a Rando segment. Yeah, I love the Talk to a Rando segment. We've just begun it, where people can randomly write into the show, and we'll put you on the air. You might get people who subscribe just so they have a chance to win the MTS Appearance Lottery. Oh. Bring some merch and give it deliberately to your guests. I have given them mugs before, and I don't have any more mugs. You're seeing literally everything. I've asked the merch people, but this stuff is slow and coming from the factory. And I hope you find your eyeglasses. Your credibility is now in question. Happy to share more thoughts. See you today. Mark. Also my name, he says. That's very nice. Well, I can't disagree with that breakdown. And I want to thank him for taking time to break it all down. I thought that was quite thorough. And I will take that note. I will say this. All the separate slides that are, targeted to wherever I am. And I mean, that's kind of hard to rally. Let me tell you something. We can't even get a podcast up on time on this show. Okay? Yesterday's podcast.
Yeah, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
At 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting these emails from viewers and listeners going, how come there's no podcast still? So I have to message Albert to get the podcast done.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what
all
the
I'm
hell
trying
they
to
do it
say
for.
is rallying a separate slide for each venue in which I find myself, that might be a little hard. If anybody will do that, it's Tony. Tony could do that.
Thanks, Tony.
And also KTLA's, or whatever place you're appearing on, their inclination to play the slides you bring. They may or may not, and depending on the accounts and stuff like that. It's not saying they wouldn't. It's just, you know what I mean. It's just.
It's a good idea. I mean, I wouldn't mind
I
having some, but I think his note, regardless of the slide. Wow, Kevin Hobbs, you are HOF.
Big shout out.
Kevin Hobbs for 4444. Come on. Thank you so much, Kevin Hobbs.
Thank you so much.
That is really cool. Thank you, Kevin. And how about Tracy Pyers? A big shout out.
Big shout out.
Tracy with the super sticker for $10. Thank you so much. And Tom Gunn with a quick 10.
Big shout out.
Come on, Tom Gunn. And Pinky with $1 a day.
Big shout out.
Thank you to Pink. And Croquet Film. Kim is a pro, says Croquet Film.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Gail Guthrie is clearly HOF. Right up there. At Thompson Terrace. Thank you, Gail.
Big shout out.
She has her own spot on Thompson Terrace in the metaverse. Guys, all of you, we're only finishing up our first hour. I'm not going to cry, but...
I'm not gonna cry! I'm not gonna cry!
I'm not gonna.
I'm not gonna cry! I'm not gonna cry!
You know I am a crier, but I'm not going to cry.
I'm not gonna cry! I'm not gonna cry!
But I do thank you all for your Patreon and PayPal support, and then for all of you turning out with super stickers and super chats today. Hey, if you've got something to say to me and you want to make sure that we get it on, and you may feel as though you're angry about something, usually it has to do with the environment or fossil fuels or something like that, go ahead. Nail us on it. You can do it in the chat, but in a super chat, I will definitely read it on the air and I'll respond to it. You can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. And you can become a Patreon or PayPal subscriber. But you can also email us at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. And then, of course, you know how to super chat and super sticker things. Kim's News.
Yes.
And then the great David Katz joins Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee Company. Here they come. Yes, here they come on the run. Republican rivals of former President Donald Trump all headed to Georgia as Trump faces charges in Fulton County. His former Vice President Mike Pence, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and 4 other GOP presidential hopefuls will be in Atlanta Friday for what's known as The Gathering. The Atlantic
sounds like a horror movie,
doesn't it? The Gathering.
Yeah. The Gathering.
Don't go to the basement. The Atlanta
This
Journal-Constitution.
They're coming. The Gathering.
That's a good deep voice. It gave me chills. The paper reports the 2-day event is sponsored by radio host Eric Erickson and co-sponsored by Governor Brian Kemp, who donated $100,000 in campaign contributions.
Wow.
Kemp, meanwhile, is responding to Trump's claims of election fraud in Georgia during the 2020 presidential race, saying the 2020 election in Georgia was not stolen.
Trump 2024! Yeah, Trump 2024!
2024! Oh, no. Yeah, there he is. Woohoo! Here he is. This is Ron Perry. This is an appointee by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to this oversight board overseeing Disney's special tax district. Well, it comes out now that apparently he taught a seminar in 2021 falsely claiming that whites were also slaves in America, using discredited research to say there was an Irish slave trade. Who is this fella? Well, the comments were made by Ron Perry, one of 5 people DeSantis appointed earlier this year to oversee the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, replacing the old board after the company spoke out against what critics called the Don't Say Gay law in Florida.
Man, they really lean into the BS in Florida. They lean into it. It's like, well, we know this is BS and we're getting criticized for it. Like, well, let's just double down on it. It's the double down generation.
I'm telling you, Perry is an Orlando-based pastor. He is CEO of a Christian ministry group called, I'm not even making it up, The Gathering. A different gathering. Made in the
this
comments.
Week, a new history told by the gatherers.
He made the comments in this hour-long class he taught for his group posted on YouTube about critical race theory called Cunningly Devised Fables.
Oh my God.
I don't even know. It's like, double down is right. They took the people that were reasonable, speaking out against what is atrocious policy, and they not only replaced them, they replaced them with the most ridiculous characters you could find. I don't understand. Does not compute. U.S. mortgage rates are now at their highest level in 21 years. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage averaged 7.09% in the week ending August 17th, up from 6.96% the week before. This is according to data from Freddie Mac, released today. A year ago, the 30-year fixed rate was 5.13%. All this means is that home affordability is at its lowest level in several decades. Buying a home right now, it's more expensive because of the added cost of financing the mortgage. And that means homeowners who previously locked in lower rates are reluctant to sell, because if they do, then they get tacked with these higher rates. So, we're looking for affordable housing, and the people aren't moving because they can't afford new mortgages.
This is why I love Kim, and that is such a great point. Most places, they would just tell you the mortgage rates are at historic highs, and that makes it harder to afford a home, and that's true. But the other part of that is what Kim just said, which is those who have mortgages now and got them and locked them in at lower rates, they want to hang on to the rate. They literally can't afford to sell because they can't afford to buy anywhere else. So what does that do? It does this thing where houses are still moving at a pretty good clip. I mean, demand is still there, right? Because supply is being constricted, and the supply is being reduced because people are hanging onto the house they have because the mortgage is so good. It's crazy. So we're going to have Michael Hiltzik, the Pulitzer Prize winner, who writes on the economy and business. He'll come in next week, so make a note. We'll have him on the show next week.
Yeah, it's a crazy cycle that we find ourselves in. Let's talk, though, right now about Ukraine and what is happening there. It's serious business. The high stakes counteroffensive moving forward with the help of the controversial cluster bombs provided by the United States. So this is happening. Marines advanced for the second time in 2 weeks on the front lines toward the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. The country's deputy defense minister confirmed a village was recaptured and liberated on Wednesday morning. So that's the latest there. In San Francisco, the sad situation where this 4-year-old girl was struck by a car. Well, there's now a woman facing charges for her role in this crash that killed this 4-year-old girl in San Francisco. Police announcing yesterday that 71-year-old Karen Cartagena has been charged with vehicular manslaughter and other counts. Officers say she ran into 2 adults as they pushed their 4-year-old daughter in a stroller near King and 4th Streets on Tuesday. If you don't know the city, that's right outside of Giants ballpark. So this is a very kind of popular area, very busy area. They say the child died from her injuries in the incident, and police say Cartagena was not speeding, but she did fail to yield to the pedestrians. The victims were visiting the city when the incident happened. So they're out of towners, and this happens, this horrible tragedy. In San Jose, a police officer has been shot. Here's the suspect in the case. The San Jose police officer, they say she's fighting for her life after being shot in the line of duty. Police announcing, last night, the unidentified officer is now in critical but stable condition after the shooting earlier yesterday. Officers were called to a condominium on Ozare Avenue and Race Street Wednesday morning for a domestic disturbance call. Police say the suspect, Gabriel Carreras, went onto a balcony and fired at officers, hitting this female officer. She was wearing a vest, but the bullet went right above the vest and got her in the chest. So the officer is in critical condition. Carreras, seen here, was taken into custody several hours later, but it's the second time this year that a San Jose officer has been shot while on duty. Here's a picture for you. Over on Treasure Island, there's robo buses. We've seen all kinds of issues with robo taxis in San Francisco. Well, here comes the robo bus. The robo buses are up and running on Treasure Island Wednesday.
They're cute.
They're cute. Yeah, they're kind of like a little mini bus. Wednesday was the first day of a 9-month pilot program bringing driverless shuttle service to Treasure Island. The free shuttle is guided by sensors. It's fully electric. Passengers on the shuttle will be able to ride between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day. There are 7 stops they can get on and off at. The local leaders hope the driverless shuttle is a hit as the population on Treasure Island grows. The new shuttle comes as San Francisco battles over the idea of driverless vehicles in city streets. But hey, we got this.
There's never been anything like this.
I wonder if they'll be doing the, would you say nothing in our history compares to?
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
That's my favorite. Thank you. The story we have it as a short, actually. Kim, I think, brought to my attention about people actually rolling around, in kind of a pornographic way in some of these things. I hope that doesn't become part of the future of these cute Treasure Island buses, because there's a certain wholesomeness to it, and it would be spoiled, if I can say. I don't mean to sound prudish, but I feel there's a place and a time for this, and that is neither the place nor the time for any kind of rolling around. So,
well, there's more people on the robo bus, so maybe not.
Which makes it even less the place and the time. Exactly.
I wonder if there's going to be a whole new, you mentioned porn, if there's going to be a whole new genre of porn because of the porn in the robo taxis.
No, I'm sure.
Where it's like robo taxis at night or whatever.
Now, will I be demonetized because Kim mentioned the P word?
Tommy? Sorry, my bad.
I'm gonna.
You said it first.
Yeah, I did say it first. I was trying to keep it down to 1 mention, but Kim, now we've had a total of 4 mentions of it.
I love how everything's my fault. Really?
Kim, how are you?
Please. Well, speaking of spoiled, a Southern California landfill is being called out for being too stinky. The Chiquita Canyon landfill in Castaic is being called upon to reduce the odor from the waste disposal site. Officials with the South Coast Air Quality Management District say they have received hundreds of odor complaints dating back to earlier this year. They traced the problem to this landfill in Castaic. They say the landfill has elevated levels of sulfur at the site, and that is what's causing that whole rotten egg smell in the area.
Yeah. So if the mortgage rates weren't enough to reduce demand, the sulfur smell will reduce demand.
They're going to get you out one way or another.
For homes, yeah.
Speaking of spoiled, health officials in Palo Alto are investigating reports that numerous students were served moldy meals at school this week. At least 4 schools reported students coming down with food poisoning after eating cafeteria lunch at school. Santa Clara County health officials were sent to the schools on Wednesday to see what the issue might have been. The lunch in question was spaghetti, which allegedly had moldy ingredients in it. Ugh. Don't eat the spaghetti, kids. And lastly, Britney Spears.
How do you screw up spaghetti?
It would seem difficult, but there's always there's a will, there's a way. Britney Spears
no. Don't
and
tell
her
me.
husband are splitting up. I'm sorry to tell you.
No.
No.
Don't tell me Britt and her husband are breaking up.
TMZ.
I'll take a trial separation, but I will not take a full breakup.
Oh, I think it's over.
No.
Oh, no.
Party over. TMZ claims the pop star and her husband, Sam Asghari, parted ways after he confronted her over rumors that she was cheating on him.
Sources
oh my God.
This is bad. I think it is worthy of 3 oh my gods. I agree.
Sources tell the outlet Asghari has moved out of the house, and this is according to Page 6 now. I don't know how much stock we put in this, but Asghari is reportedly threatening to release extraordinarily embarrassing Britney Spears information if his prenup is not renegotiated.
Wow.
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
Yeah, it is going to spoil my Christmas. You can joke about it, but first of all, he's incredibly hot. I mean, I'm a straight guy, but that's a handsome dude, and she is gorgeous and a superstar. It's if they can't make it work. And so he wants a renegotiation on the prenup, or he says he's going to release a bunch of really embarrassing stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, and I know that there's all types of talk of the conservatorship by her parents and whether or not that was appropriate or not. But also, I would say that her parents were trying to protect her from marrying him, right? They had a you can't get married clause in their whatever paperwork, and she wanted to marry this guy. And so maybe they saw the writing on the wall that he was after money. Maybe that's what this was all about. But sad that she, gets into a relationship and maybe gets taken advantage of again. I don't know. We'll see. They're gone. They're done.
You know how I feel about the conservatorship. I felt it was an overreach, and people make mistakes. People get married to people, men and women, that parents don't approve of, and maybe that everybody can see as a total mistake. That's their right to do it, and people lose their money. And I always said that if it was a guy who was losing his money and who was marrying the wrong people, they wouldn't have been put in a conservatorship. I thought there was a gender bias here. I thought there was I thought because she was a young woman, not even that young, they took her ability to make choices about her body even away from her. I was not a supporter of the conservatorship. That said, this looks like a mess. And I wish them both well. I guess that's all I can say.
This report.
Thank you. I thought that was about the most political thing I could say.
Sponsored by the fine people at Coachella Valley Coffee Company. That's right. When you use the code MARKT, you get an exclusive deal, a 10% off across the board on whatever you order. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is the website. We are getting message after message of people that have ordered this and are floored by how wonderful this coffee is. And I will say the tea is amazing as well. They're sustainable. They are giving back to female-owned businesses where the coffee is sourced, and you can call them if you don't know what the roast is, or you want a certain roast, or you don't know what the right coffee is for you before you, buy some coffee that may be a little more than you're used to spending. You can call them, and we did at my house, and they're very nice. They explain exactly what's happening and exactly what the roast is, light roast, dark roast, what have you. Really nice people and a great business to support.
And I will say, were they just nice, and was it just sustainable, and were they just women-owned farms?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great. But what I wouldn't say is, well, and they're also, and this is what I'm about to say, because this is true too, and this is the most important thing. It's the best coffee I've ever had. And we've served all kinds of coffees at my home. I've had Turkish coffee, Vietnamese coffee. I've had coffee in Thailand. I've had coffee all across Europe and Italy. French roast, dark roast, light roast, breakfast blends. These are hand-roasted beans, and the coffee is magnificent. Get the bean that's right for you, though. You may not like the bean that's, I love the Ocotillo espresso. I love the El Gato espresso. But you should get the bean that's right for you. Get the roast that's right for you. So it's all there on the website. And again, anything you get, CoachellaValley.com. And when you check out, use the code MARKT, and you'll get 10% off. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Thanks,
I'm Kim
Kim
McAllister. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Hit it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson? 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 Who's Mark Thompson?
Geez, I get the idea. You don't need to, I don't think you need to pound it like that. All right. I'll answer a couple of questions that have come in a moment, but I don't want to wait any longer to get to this guy. If you're driving around Britain in the morning, you can hear this gentleman, or chap, as they say over there. Mm-hmm. You can hear him opining on a number of things and updating the Brits about what's happening over here in the colonies. Yeah, he's heard around the globe and on Fox and MS. He's everywhere.
He's
you
an
can hear him on
international
KCBS.
Sensation.
Yeah, with Pat, he always jumps in with Pat. And we really inherited him from Pat, and it's like the great crown jewel of our guest lineup. And wow, has this man met his moment with everything going on in the law. He's the former federal prosecutor. Now he works the defense side of the table. How about it for David Katz, everybody?
Great to be with you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Well, I want to check off at the end here on a decision that was made at the Supreme Court level to, now maybe we can just do it quickly, David, if you wouldn't mind. It doesn't relate to Trump, and it doesn't relate to a conspiracy to overthrow any kind of election. It relates to women's reproductive freedoms and that abortion pill that is embattled right now. It's been the source of a lot of controversy. Sort of, it's viewed as the next front in the abortion battle. Can you speak to what the Supreme Court just decided in this case?
Well, I think this is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, right? In the
the Fifth Circuit. Okay, I see. Yep.
This is the case that started in Amarillo, Texas. It was judge shopped to the friendliest judge for the right to lifers, probably in the country, a Trump-appointed judge who used to actually be with a right to life, so-called advocacy group. He was put on the bench by a very narrow vote after nominated by Trump. They shopped this case to him, and he basically ruled that this medical abortion pill hadn't been properly approved by the FDA. This was earth-shattering because no FDA decision like this had been stricken or struck down. And the pharmaceutical industry got behind this because they said, if it can happen to this pill, which is controversial regarding abortions, it can happen to all kinds of things, diabetes medicine, COVID medications, you name it, it could happen to it. So Big Pharma is on the side of the angels on this one. They're fighting to protect the rights of the manufacturer of this medical abortion pill. That case ended up going up to the U.S. Supreme Court because the district judge there put in place an injunction that would have stopped access to the pill, not just in red states, but in blue states. He entered a nationwide injunction. The U.S. Supreme Court threw out his nationwide injunction, and they said there will not be an injunction until this U.S. Supreme Court rules on it again. But the issues are kind of complicated. Why don't we let it go to the appellate court? We're going to dissolve this stay. We're going to let people still have access all over the country to these pills on the same bases they were allowed before. But we're going to let the case proceed to appeal in the Fifth Circuit. And if you don't like the Fifth Circuit, and if you don't like Trump's appointments, this was one of the worst. You had the Clarence Thomas, you had the Stanford-educated Clarence Thomas law clerk named James Ho, I think is his name, Federalist Society through and through. He would have gone further. He would have actually backed up everything that that judge in Amarillo, Texas did. He would have thrown out the FDA approvals of the drug way back 20, 25 years. Fortunately, the other two didn't go that far, but I think it was very unfortunate too. Another one was from Trump, one was from Bush, and they said, wait a second, the recent decisions that the FDA made about this abortion pill, and this is how more than half the women in America get an abortion, not what we may think of with a procedure at a doctor's office, but by taking this pill within a short time of finding out that they're pregnant. They would basically ban the recent decisions. Now, the recent decisions by the FDA are that you can do it by telemedicine, which means that you can call a doctor on the phone. You can get it sent to you through the mail, and you don't have to have a face-to-face prescribing by the doctor. So what's the net effect of all of that, Mark, if this Fifth Circuit, I believe, very right-wing, very non-precedential decision stands? It would mean that all over the country, you couldn't get it, but the bite would be even worse in the red states. Those red states where there aren't doctors around, where clinics are being threatened all the time, where they make you drive 200 or 300 miles to see a doctor, that would all be back into effect because you couldn't get the procedure. They make it so hard for you. And you also couldn't even get this medicine, this pill, because you'd have to drive to a doctor, see the doctor face to face, couldn't have it mailed to you, and couldn't have it prescribed to you by telemedicine. That's where we are right now if the Fifth Circuit decision stands. But the good news is that, as I said at the beginning, the stay was dissolved. And so none of this affects anything at the moment. This case will go back to the U.S. Supreme Court. It will involve all of those issues. It may be right during the 2024 election. Already there's going to be a huge turnout of Democrats and independents to vote on this issue since Roe v. Wade was overturned in the Dobbs decision. This is just like, this is like two more hammers in the coffin. I think there'll be a huge turnout of people who are concerned about this issue, concerned about a woman's right to choose. And if this decision comes down the other way, if it comes down the way the Fifth Circuit just ruled, Mark, there'll be an absolute uproar because, again, let me say this, more than half the women in America, blue states, red states, get an abortion not by a procedure, but by having this pill normally prescribed by telemedicine sent to them in the mail. They take it at home. It's 2 steps to it. And they won't be able to do that if the U.S. Supreme Court decision stands. Yet, if the U.S. Supreme Court agrees with the Fifth Circuit that just ruled the way I said.
And just in general, because this seems as though, based on what you've just said, to be the case, especially when you talk about, the Clarence Thomas clerk who's now ascended into this judgeship, et cetera. These are reverse engineered decisions, right? They've already decided they want to block all of these things or whatever it might be. But in this case, it's this pill. And they're just going to find the way to do it. And in this case, it received approval in the wrong way. Isn't that right, David? It's reverse engineered.
This is rich, Mark, because it's a female judge who wrote the decision. She says she's helping women. Oh, how wonderful for women to be helped in this way. Poor, often minority women, women who are desperate, women who are 16 or 17 years old, women who are trying to do family planning. All they want to do is to take a pill at home, which is incredibly safe and effective. The reasoning goes like this, that the FDA considered each one of those individually. They considered telemedicine. They considered having it sent through the mail. They considered the fact that it could be prescribed without someone doing a full, clinical examination. But they said the FDA really hadn't considered them all together. And when you look at the effect of all of them together, oh my goodness, a woman's health. And they never stopped to analyze and say, wait a second, compared to what? Compared to having an unwanted pregnancy, compared with the risks of pregnancy, especially an unwanted one, especially one by a poor woman, a woman without many resources. Really, the pill is more dangerous when it's been proven to be totally effective. It's more dangerous than carrying the baby to term involuntarily because the law won't let you take the pill. That's just, that's what's so frustrating about these cases, because the normal balancing that goes into it, which is based on expert opinions. I mean, the FDA has expertise in this. And this whole right-wing, regulatory thing by the courts. They do this with environmental cases. And all of a sudden they say that these expert agencies got it wrong. Sure, these agencies are bureaucratic. Sure, sometimes they're captured by, big industry like big pharma. But my goodness, I mean, this is a really major decision. Just about every pharmaceutical company in the country has come out and said, this is madness. We will not invest billions of dollars in these drugs. We're not going to invest in things that are going to cure and help people if then the case gets shopped to some crackpot judge somewhere and then to the most conservative circuit in the country that doesn't like this type of medicine for whatever reason, but it's not medical, it's not scientific. We are not going to invest billions of dollars in this just to have our whole campaign to market the drug then thwarted by selectively bringing the case around the country. And that is why I believe that, we talked about this before, is that right-wing conservative majority on the Supreme Court, is it more theocratic or is it more economic? And I think they're going to be more economic. They're going to back up the huge investments and payments by the pharmaceutical industry and not the theocrats. I think we just had a very Fifth Circuit theocratic decision. And it's this Fifth Circuit. It's this Fifth Circuit that's down in Texas and Louisiana. It was bad enough, Mark, and now it's been packed. I'll use the word packed. It's been packed with Trump appointees, Trump nominees.
We're going to take about a 90-second break, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to get into the Trump stuff, okay? That's our plan. We continue with the great David Katz in a moment. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Everything is going extremely well.
Calling me a liar? Is that what you call him?
You, sir, are a liar.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Liar, liar, your pants are on fire!
Google told me.
Can you let him finish, sir? It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
No.
I'm going to tell you what I think.
What are the porn stars doing?
Do you have a secret now?
Does an itty bitty bit of weed?
100% effective. How about that?
Say what?
And this is their new host.
There is no defense for my conduct.
I misspoke. I stand corrected.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Time's up, mother effers.
Yeah, those who thought that it was a bathroom break, it was not. I was dealing with something, a little bit of an incident outside the studio, but everything is fine now. But I appreciate the quick break so I could just handle it. Now it's done. David, I want to get to Donald Trump, and I want to get to the entire case and dragnet associated with all of his alleged co-conspirators. The news that you broke here, I thought, when you joined us earlier in the week, and you were so good to join us as it was all happening and the indictments came down. For those who might have missed it, I wonder if you can just review the timing, because as excited as everyone is about this, it really will be nothing more than a backdrop, the ramp up to the case, which you had said, as I recall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, won't make it, especially the Georgia case, won't make it in time for the election.
Well, I don't think that it will. And for several reasons, I think, more corroboration for that. The California State Bar is trying to discipline and maybe disbar Professor Eastman. He was a law professor in Orange County, and he gave this real oddball advice. And some people say that it was really criminal, and they say it's worthy of discipline because it was so far-fetched and was kind of part of this plot. And the arguments come up that, well, let's see how the criminal trial comes out. Let's see how the Georgia trial comes out. I guess he wants a stay or a delay of his bar proceedings. And the California State Bar, an official agency, came back and said, are you kidding? That trial won't go for years. So it's not me saying that I don't think that Georgia case will go for years. It's that I think that people who really are trying to figure out for their own docketing and their own purposes have figured that out. One thing that's going on right now, Mark, which is really fascinating, it may seem a little inside baseball, but it's actually very, very important. Mark Meadows ran almost immediately to federal court with a request to remove the case to federal court. Now, people may ask, well, wait a second, I thought this was a state court case. How can it go to federal court? I know two of them are in federal court, the one in the Southern District of Florida regarding the wrongful retention of the national security documents at Mar-a-Lago. And, of course, the one in D.C., which involves 3 conspiracies, and of which this Georgia case can be sort of thought of as a subset. But a state has a right to bring a violation of state criminal laws in state court. But an officer of the United States has an argument that his or her case ought to be removed and tried in the federal court. The idea is that they shouldn't have to run the gauntlet in a hostile state court environment when they're a federal official. This comes up, Mark, a lot with, let's say, FBI agents. And you can think of it kind of 2 different ways. Maybe the locals are very hostile to what the FBI is trying to do. So they prosecute the FBI agent for something that's within the course and scope of his or her duty. That case, classically, if the state tries to do that, gets removed to the federal court. But of course, if the FBI agent gets into a bar fight, he got into a bar fight, and he gets prosecuted in state court like anyone else who got into a bar fight. So the argument is always that it's kind of beyond the course and scope. And that's going to be the argument by Fannie Willis down there. She'll oppose that request to have the case removed to federal court. And she'll say, no, wait a second. Him going down and traveling into Georgia and trying to attend a private counting, a non-public counting of the vote from which he then had to be excluded, was not part of his official duties. But you can see it can be kind of a slippery slope. Mark Meadows will say it was. He said in his petition to go to the federal court and to have it removed. He said that I was reporting back to the president. I mean, the sitting president would want to know. I mean, not this one, not with the allegations that were made, but I mean, theoretically, a sitting president would want to know, is this count going to change the result or not? A rational, conscientious president might want to know what's going on so he could really start the transition, so he could start the story that it's the big steal, if it's not so. And that's Meadows' story, that he went down there to see what was what. He tried to do some work on the ground so he could report back. And here's what's ironic about his removal petition. He claims that he told Trump, it's all being done extremely well. It's all being done extremely professionally down there, which, of course, is a nail in the coffin of Trump as part of his big lie, as part of knowing that what he was propagating was false. And yet he kept propagating it anyway and putting out his story anyway. But I'll tell you this, I don't like to make these predictions. And this one is very, very hard to predict. They're going to have an evidentiary hearing, and we're going to see if Mark Meadows has a right to have the case removed to federal court. And here's all I would say. Can I just talk one more minute on this?
Yeah, of course. And I just want to ask you, though, because when you mentioned evidentiary hearing and you're saying they're going to have it, well, in Georgia, we'll see it, right? Will it be televised?
No, because the evidentiary hearing will be in federal court where the federal judge, everybody always points this out, appointed by Obama, the federal judge appointed by Obama, is going to have an evidentiary hearing, but it will not be televised, just like things, unfortunately, are not televised in federal court. But what a federal judge does when a federal judge gets a matter, first to look, has the U.S. Supreme Court opined on this issue? Turns out the Supreme Court opined on this issue, but like over 100 years ago, in a very interesting case where a marshal was protecting a U.S. Supreme Court justice. And it didn't say that the U.S. Supreme Court justice was entitled to protection, but this particular U.S. Supreme Court justice, it was Fields, and it was in California, was attacked. The marshal killed the attacker, and the state wanted to go after the federal marshal. The U.S. Supreme Court said whether it's clear in the law or not that a U.S. Supreme Court justice traveling around the country is entitled to protection or not, it sure looks like this marshal was acting in the scope of his duty, even though the law, right, didn't say that a U.S. Supreme Court justice was entitled to marshal's protection. But the more recent case is in the 11th Circuit. This judge will be bound by the 11th Circuit. So if he looks beyond the Supreme Court, he'll look at 11th Circuit law. And that was an FBI agent who was doing a sting. And as part of the sting, they were going to bribe a corrupt state prosecutor. The state prosecutor turned around and indicted the FBI agent. That was back in the early 80s. And a unanimous decision by that 11th Circuit, which will be the circuit that will govern this judge in federal court in Atlanta, who's going to have to decide on this removal matter, said that no, it was clear that the FBI agent was acting in the course and scope. He'd gotten approval from his supervisor. He's gotten approval from his supervisor's supervisor. The supervisor wasn't in any trouble. The supervisor's supervisor wasn't charged with anything. And the FBI agent was acting in the course and scope. Now, by contrast, Meadows cannot turn around and say, well, I got proper approval from my supervisor. His supervisor, ex-President Trump, is in the same pickle that he's in, right? And we're expecting that Trump is going to sit back. He has 30 days from his own arraignment. So he has about 40 days or so. Trump will decide, he'll have to decide whether he wants to make that removal motion. I can't think of any reason why Trump won't make that removal motion. He'll try to get the matter in federal court, but he has this 30 or 40 days, Mark, to see how it plays out, how the evidentiary hearing goes. In other words, Trump will have this all in the rearview mirror when Trump has to decide exactly what he's going to do. But I'm trying to answer your question, Mark, by saying this. However that case comes out, and I think on balance, it probably will come out that they won't remove it. I think there'll be an appeal right away to this 11th Circuit, right? And they'll argue this old precedent. And then I think there'll be either an appeal or a request for a hearing by the U.S. Supreme Court. My point being, huge delay, because one of the things they're asking for is a stay. They're asking for a stay of everything that happens in state court while this all gets batted around in federal court. That's just the first issue in the case, Mark, that might get batted around for months and really paralyze the state court proceedings.
That's fascinating. That really is fascinating. And you had commented before that Trump, because we addressed this issue right away. We addressed two issues, just to remind everyone, but this was one of them, that the removal thing will not work for Trump. But Meadows might have an argument, at least an appealable argument, is kind of what you're hinting at?
You have to be a federal officer or somebody clearly deputized by a federal officer. The others may come in and say, well, I was really deputized. I thought that I was, but they're going to lose. They're going to lose. They weren't getting a paycheck from Uncle Sam. Meadows is probably the best case to start off with. He was getting a paycheck from Uncle Sam. He was the White House chief of staff at all of the times that he's alleged to have committed state crimes. So that's why I say his is, I just have a feeling that if his case goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, that 5 justices on the Supreme Court, and you know who they are going to hold in his favor. So not just his, but also Trump's. And I want to say just one more thing.
Wait. You think that the if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, that those justices, that loaded court, would rule to take this case for Trump to federal court also? Is that what you just said?
Why do you think not? He was getting a federal paycheck and was the president of the United States at the time that all of these things happened. See, the argument's going to be that Meadows and Trump acted for the campaign. They didn't act in the course and scope of their office. But, they did act in the course and scope of the office. The only question is, did they far exceed it? That's the thing, especially with Trump. It was so excessive, this intervention, that it's election interference with a state election, which is what Georgia is. Even though it was the presidential vote, it's managed by the state. But you have to make a plausible claim. Will the U.S. Supreme Court say that Trump and Meadows made a plausible claim? Now, Giuliani was not an employee. Eastman was not an employee. I think all of those people are out of luck. But Meadows, and that's what I'm saying. Trump is going to see how the Meadows case goes, and then he'll plan his strategy behind it. But he has another 40 days to make his removal motion. The fact that Trump hasn't asked for removal to federal court doesn't mean he's not going to. I think it's inevitable, Mark, that he'll ask for it. Trump will.
The other thing that we talked about, but just to address it quickly, and then I want to ask you quickly, gosh, I don't know, another minute or so, David, but I want to ask you about the jury and poisoning the jury pool, which seems to be like an agenda item. I'll get to that in just a second, but I want to just address the fact that in 8 weeks, because of this new Georgia law, they could conceivably decapitate this entire thing by getting rid of and replacing Fani Willis with someone else. That the governor can do that. This new law goes into effect, I believe, in 8 weeks' time. Now, you would mention that you didn't think it likely, just because you felt as though Kemp wouldn't want to, it may not represent where he is politically. I don't know if you said that, but you did say that you didn't think he wanted to get involved in the case that way, as I recall, right?
I said both those things, that I think it would be a political earthquake to try to remove her. And I don't think Governor Kemp, who's popular down there, and has staked out his position that the vote was completely fair. It was counted and recounted. Trump lost his state by 12,000 votes with no hanky-panky, with nothing strange going on. And, he and Raffensperger have really taken the position that Trump then tried to interfere and did exactly what Fani Willis is saying. I think their position is that, well, everyone's innocent until proven guilty. They've certainly, suggested, they've signaled to me anyway, that they think that, Trump went way out of bounds. And that's going to be kind of just in lay terms, on this whole removal thing. Was this way out of bounds? Was this not something that was really part of his presidential duties? And it hurts Trump and it hurts Meadows that counting the state vote is not a federal responsibility.
I'll ding hanky-panky. I want to ask you, David, to finish. Is his get-out-of-jail-free card Trump, and by extension, all the rest of them? Is his get-out-of-jail-free card to so poison the atmosphere and muddy the atmosphere around this trial that the jury, it will be impossible to seat a truly impartial jury, or a jury that would come up with a verdict in this case? Like a hung jury would be more likely, given the way that he's trying to muddy the water. Is that the plan, or might that be a plan? Is that an effective plan?
That's certainly part of the defense plan. There's an old saying that the prosecutor wants everything to go right and the criminal defense attorney just wants anything to go wrong. So one of the things that could go wrong is a hung jury. One of the things that could go wrong is that the case drags on and on and on, that maybe Fani Willis, they beat her in the next election. Believe me, they'll try. They'll try to beat Kemp in the next election. They'll probably try to stack those state parole boards and see if they can get the state parole or probation board or something like that to do something in their favor. They'll try to change Georgia law. They'll try to somehow remove her. But with all of that said, once the case actually goes to trial, which I think is going to be after 2024, after it goes to trial, I don't think Trump has any defense. I think that on the evidence, this was so outrageous, and they had the phone call. That's an amazing thing, I used to say when I was as prosecutor, you wanted to have three things if you possibly could. And one was a phone call. One was the defendant on a phone call saying clearly incriminating things, which they have on Trump in this case. It's a great thing. The other thing is sort of a pattern of behavior by a criminal defendant where they can't credibly argue to the jury. By now, Trump cannot credibly argue to the jury. I mean, he's a rogue and a scoundrel. The remarkable thing is that his base seems to like the idea of having a rogue and a scoundrel. Like only somebody with his terrible temperament could, stand up to the woke mob or whatever their narrative is.
Yeah, it's the own the libs trial, but you're right. That's kind of what they've rallied around. Love our time together. Thank you, David. Look forward to next week, and appreciate you always being available for us. You're just the best. Thanks. David Katz, everybody. Oh, did he have something more to say? No,
pleasure to be with you. Pleasure to be with you.
That's nice. I'm glad you went by. That's nice. How dare you try to cut off David Katz, Tony, before he's done?
Thanks, Tony.
My
God.
Being
efficient.
Yeah.
Sorry, David.
You were moving things along. No, it's all right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, let's get some news, and then we'll wrap things up with a couple of cool stories. We'll also check in with the chat, and those of you who stepped up today and been so cool about helping us out. news with Kim, and then Kim,
how are you?
Unless you have something else, Kim, I'll begin to wind things down. I like to stick the landing, though. I don't know if everybody's noticed that, but we stick the landing on this show. You're damn right. I don't like check out at, like 15 minutes before the show.
Why are you yelling?
Because I'm sticking the landing. I want you to see it stuck. A lot of shows check out. They wind down. We wind down, but we stick it. Stick that landing and smash that like button.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Why are you yelling?
All right. Let's settle down. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Let's start with Fani Willis. She, a Georgia State Republican lawmaker, is now calling for a special session of the legislature to investigate this Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis. This comes after Willis charged former President Trump and others with allegedly trying to overturn the state's 2020 election results. So because of that, the Georgia State Republican lawmaker wants her investigated. State Senator Colton Moore said Willis is conducting a political persecution of Trump. Moore thinks Willis should be completely defunded of any state money and investigated for a possible impeachment. He also said a probe is needed due to poor conditions at the Fulton County Jail in Atlanta. A long, drawn-out prosecution of rap star Young Thug mentioned in that as well. The Kansas Bureau of Investigation is now returning all of the items that it seized from the raid of a Kansas newspaper. The items were taken last week during a raid of the Marion County Record newspaper. The items being returned after the Marion County attorney found insufficient evidence of wrongdoing on the part of the newspaper. Gee, thanks for the raid then, guys. The paper has requested their materials be sent to a Kansas City lab for forensic testing before they come back to the newsroom. Marion County Record's front page yesterday led with the headline, "Seized, but not silenced." There has been a pretty major arrest in the case of a murdered Florida Microsoft executive. His name was Jared Bridigan. He was gunned down in what police say was an ambush. This happened last year in the Jacksonville Beach area while he was dropping off his twins at the home of his ex-wife. Pictured here. Her name is Shanna Gardner Fernandez. Well, today, the state attorney's office announced the arrest of Gardner Fernandez. Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty. Gardner Fernandez's current husband was also arrested in March for the murder. Bridigan and his ex-wife divorced in 2015, and police say they had several court battles over custody of their twins. So her arrest is the latest development in this case. Maybe this isn't what they mean. Happy hour gang? No. There are hours though being requested for a gang. A Chicago community group is calling on gang members to cease fire from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Oh my God.
Okay. If you could just give us just stop the bullets from flying during that time frame, we'll be better. People in the Rogers Park area say they are living in the middle of a gang war. No amount of pleading for it to stop has helped. So now the group Native Sons is asking the gangs not to shoot during the daylight hours, taking the lives of innocent kids out playing. The group says it would like for all of the shooting to stop, but for now it can only take the baby steps. So, I know it is crazy. There's something going on in the world of chess too, and then I'll wrap it up. But I wanted to let you know the International Chess Federation is barring transgender women from participating in women's events. The new policy will go into effect August 21st, while the Federation does further analysis to issue a final decision on the matter. Transgender women will still be able to participate in events held under open categories. The U.S.-based National Center for Transgender Equality lashed out at the decision, saying it is so insulting to cis women, to trans women, to the game itself. The policy change comes as the athletic organizations address transgender athletes beliefs, with World Aquatics recently creating an open category for swimmers of all sex and gender identities. Here's the question about this one, though, Mark. It's chess. It's not a physical game, right? It's a mental game. Why does there need to be categories anyway?
Actually, no, though.
Okay.
Chess is physically grueling at that level. When you and I play chess, it's not physically grueling. But when those grandmasters play chess and at the competitive level, chess is a physically demanding sport or game, I guess is what you'd call it. And so this dates back to the days of Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky and the Russian champs and the American champs. That's the only reason I know this, because a lot has been written about the physical demands, the demands on the body that chess at that level actually produces. So now I'm not saying that this decision on their part in any way
physical stress, or what kind of physical demands?
Right, physical stress, but there is a physiological aspect to how you handle that stress. And so the endurance required, the focus required, you have the same thing in competitive poker playing, honestly. Any kind of game where you're sitting there and have to remain focused, and you're dealing with, moments where your heart is rushing and your metabolism is literally changing throughout the hours it takes to actually run these matches out. There's a physical toll it takes. So I understand that part of it. But again, just to finish my thought, I'm not saying that that's the right decision on their part to bar transgenders. I haven't even looked at this issue. It's astounding, honestly, but and just surprises me. But it is the case that there's a physical aspect to competitive chess.
It's interesting because you think about muscles and, swimming or running, and men just being physically stronger, bigger, able to carry more weight, swim for longer, go faster, what have you. But it seems to me that women would be able to handle stress on their body, endurance at a table, and thinking. And so I don't understand. I have to look into it, but I don't understand the categories for a mental game like that. Poker,
I'd love for you to look
chess.
into it and talk to us about it more. But I think when you look into it, you'll find that there is an aspect of competitive chess that's reasonably demanding physically. And so I'd love to, but please look into it and report back to us if you will.
Kim, how are you?
Will do.
Okay.
Can do, will do. This report is crowdfunded, which means that we rely on you to support the Mark Thompson Show. TheMarkThompsonShow.com is where you'll find the PayPal and the Patreon links. I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
People are commenting that I left out Arizona. It is true. We left out a couple of things that we said we'd get to today, one of which is Arizona, and I actually will address Arizona in a moment. The other of which, though, just a quick program note, we have a conversation with the esteemed pulmonologist, Dr. Ray Casciari, about dementia and this huge study that's just come out, which speaks to the correlation between wildfire smoke and actually agricultural air pollution as well, pollution around agriculture, and dementia. So he speaks to that. But the good news is, and it's not just guess what? There's one more thing killing you, ruining your life, whatever. There is something you can do about it. That conversation with Dr. Ray will likely be on Monday. So we're going to make that program note for you now. I wanted to address the Arizona thing, though, because a couple of you in the chat,
The Mark Thompson Show,
did speak about Arizona and what might happen, because as you know, the former president was indicted on charges related to efforts to overturn the last election, right? And the same thing with fake electors and all the other details that we've become all too familiar with. The question becomes, might that same sort of legal action that Georgia took, might they take that kind of action in Arizona? In Arizona, I'll remind you, the margin of victory for Joe Biden was even tighter than Georgia. So it's a state where, if you could actually get in there, you might have been able to get away with it. The pressure campaign emerged immediately after votes were counted in Arizona. The state fake electors and the Arizona Senate's hand recount of 2.1 million Maricopa County ballots remain under investigation by the Arizona Attorney General's office. But reached this week, the spokesperson for the Attorney General, Chris Mays, said she would have no comment on the Georgia indictment. And she declined to say if she's read the charging documents in Fulton County. My focus continues to be removing dangerous criminals from our streets. No investigation of the type you mentioned has been submitted to my office. This is happening in Arizona. Those are the comments. Now, Arizona saw the Trump legal team come down there and pressure state lawmakers to not certify results. The same dance is being done in Arizona as was being done in Georgia. And then you'll remember the Trump auditors actually went down there and they found that there was no kind of irregularity.
Tampering, right.
Yeah. But the fake electors scheme was hatched there. Now, it looks as though Arizona won't jump to it, and one of the reasons might be political, because there just isn't the support for this within Arizona for this kind of move that Fani Willis has made in Georgia. Everything I'm reading is suggesting that it may not happen, although now they are saying that they are investigating, in addition to getting criminals off the streets. Just today, they're saying that there may be an investigation going on, but they're not saying that Donald Trump is the subject of that investigation. And here's the statement, and you can read what you want into it. I can confirm an ongoing investigation into the fake elector situation in Arizona. I am unable to comment beyond that at this time. So it's an open investigation. I think it's a clock killer more than anything. Because I believe the state, I don't know. Everything I've read about the state of Arizona would suggest that I just don't think that they have the political will to make it happen, but they might.
I was reading that, the fake electors, the alleged fake electors have been charged in Michigan. And I think one other state, there's 7 states, right, where they sent fake electors.
Right.
And I was reading that not only are they considering, possibly indicting Trump, but also busting their fake electors as well. So they may be the next state, even if they don't issue an indictment toward the former president, they may be the next state that cracking down on the people that were faking it.
Yeah. It's one thing to bust the fake electors, and that is happening in Michigan, of course, already. But it's another thing to go after Donald Trump and this sort of wide-ranging conspiracy, which was the plan with Fani Willis and is the plan there. I don't know. I mean, Mays is a Democrat, if it matters, in Arizona. But I don't know. Oddly, because she's a Democrat, it might work the other way. We'll have to see. And I'll tell you what, we'll talk tomorrow about this. Kim, will you remind me?
I will.
Talk to Avila and Shore about this as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's also a quality, and it shouldn't be this way, of, wow, we've indicted the guy enough, and...
Is it enough, though? Because
I don't think so.
The victims in the case are all Americans, right? All Americans who had their votes discounted or somehow thwarted. We're all victims here. So every state should be able to file charges if they so choose.
Well, of course, I agree with you. I agree with you. I mean, I believe if you violated the law in multiple ways, you should be charged in multiple ways. If you violated the law in multiple states, you should be charged in multiple states. So I completely agree with you. I'm just suggesting that it seems to me that increasingly the charging and the manner of charging is informed by political considerations and not by legal considerations. So that's what I'm concerned with. But we'll see. And, you know, last thing, and I'm not saying this necessarily informs the Arizona decision, but this doxing, this harassment, this threatening of judges and grand jurors, you know what? It works. It works. Mobbed up, armed up, angry Americans actually do have the effect to chill out a lot of people from being enthusiastic to move forward and be the cutting edge of any kind of legal action against that mob and those that the mob supports. It's a sad fact, but that's one of the things that makes me sick about all this doxing and this threatening. And that's why I think you have to go after, and they are going after, the woman who threatened with the phone call. But you have to make an example. Sadly, you just do. Ron Cook, yes, all states, so we all have standing because it's not Georgia because of the Electoral College. What Georgia does affects all Americans. Certainly that's true. And we'll see. But I will talk about it tomorrow. Also tomorrow in the first hour, I will get to a couple of stories that aren't related to Trump, but are related to Jim Jordan. And actually some of what I just touched on. I will lastly mention tomorrow that we'll talk about a poll, new polling, that if you're saddened by the support that Donald Trump has seemed to get, the undying support, you may be encouraged by the latest polling. And the latest polling is really done effectively. And it would suggest, and again, I'll get into this more with Shore and Avila tomorrow, that all of this stuff that's coming out, the details, and being forced to focus on the details is having an effect on the popularity of Donald Trump, and more to the point, the likelihood that people would vote for him in a coming election. Now, that's not to say that Biden is beating the band with all of that, but it is to say that it's not as though Donald Trump is the Teflon Don. Some of it is sticking to him. And then lastly, I want to mention this. We talked about Rudy Giuliani. You know, he's run out of money because he's got to pay his legal bills and he's got other bills as well. With his attorney in tow, Rudy Giuliani traveled to Mar-a-Lago in recent months on a mission to make a personal and desperate appeal to former President Donald Trump. He wanted Donald Trump to pay his legal bills. By going in person, a source familiar with the matter said that Giuliani and his lawyer believed they could explain face-to-face why Trump needed to assist his former attorney with his ballooning legal bills. Did Trump bite? Did Trump come to the rescue? The former president, who is notoriously strict about dipping into his own coffers, well, that's a nice way to put it, didn't seem very interested in helping out Giuliani.
So Giuliani, who the guy who's, you know, as you say, carried the former president's water, goes to Trump hat in hand and says, listen, I'm your friend. I'm in real trouble. I've been defending you. I've got all these lawsuits because of it. And Trump just kind of closes the door and says, nope.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it was almost precisely as you said, Kim. And here is Giuliani, who thank you, Tom Gunn, for $10 on a super sticker and super chat. It is a super chat, Tom Gunn.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Appreciate that. Thanks for everything, Mark, Kim, and Tony. Thank you. And just to finish this up, as Kim suggested, Costello, who is the Giuliani lawyer, Robert Costello, you may remember him, he went down there with Giuliani face-to-face with Trump and said, hey, look, we need to get some money from you.
Yeah.
And Trump said, not so much. One source said that he agreed to cover a small fee from a data vendor that's hosting Giuliani's records. Remember, that's like a $90,000 fee. I believe we went through all of his liabilities, Giuliani's, the other day. But the trip to Mar-a-Lago, that was a desperate Hail Mary kind of pass. And Trump shined him on. That's right. I mean, Rudy thought he'd get a place in Trump's cabinet, you'll remember, right? Rudy said, he's going to take care of me. That's a quote. He thought he would at least get something. He even thought for a time that he might become attorney general. Now he's a guy who's begging for Trump to help him with the legal fees.
There's never been anything like this.
And so, yeah, that's the situation there. Rudy.
God, we thought William Barr was bad. Imagine Attorney General Rudy Giuliani. That would have been atrocious.
That would have been worse, but Barr was awful. You're right. It would have been.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Careful what you wish for, right? What am I doing, Tony? I know. Did we recognize all of the
yes,
all the boys and girls? Thank you. I want to say to all the boys and girls, Republicans, Democrats, Glenn Kostick. What up, Glenn Kostick? Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Thanks for the $2, Glenn, on the super sticker. We appreciate it. We're crowdfunded, so we hate to do, but we have to Giuliani you. We have to come to you hat in hand to keep us on the air. I think we're a greater value than Rudy is, but yeah. Don't make me cry, everybody. I don't want to have...
I'm not going to cry!
No,
I'm not going to cry!
I do want to, though, emphasize that we love your support. Tony, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
The After Party Live is next over on the After Party Live channel. I love an after party.
For the Mark Thompson
I love
Show.
an after party.
Bye-bye.
And I love it to be live. And that's why I like the After Party Live. Till tomorrow's Big Friday show. Bye-bye.